30 long days. The entire manhunt stayed trapped inside Arizona. Sun-scorched foothills, concrete drainage tunnels under Catalina. Hundreds of federal agents and volunteers scoured that exact terrain. Waiting, everything stayed within a 60-minute radius. Then the feds dialed deep into Mexico. The twist. Listen closely. Right now, there is absolutely zero visual proof she crossed the border. A true ghost. Law enforcement on both sides swear they lack hard evidence. Officially, the trail goes dead at the border. Pima County deputies echoed that narrative, but nobody knew yet what was truly hiding. Federal cops do not ring up international allies because they hit a wall. They call because the map demands it. 60 miles is 60 miles. Connect the concrete tunnels to the exact address where they finally cuffed the first suspect. Add the digital ransom and a buried secret about her family history everyone missed. That was the first mistake they made. You finally begin to understand exactly why seasoned detectives suspect she vanished from the Tucson area long before the clock struck 3:00 on February 1st. You know the grim basics. Nancy Guthrie, 84. The beloved mother of a national TV anchor, last seen alive near 9:50 on January 31st, dropped safely at her upscale suburban home. Her world felt so normal. Footage caught a masked predator, armed, 5 feet 9, 25-liter bag. He systematically blinded the lens, forcing absolute darkness. Investigators found drops of her blood on the porch. Her phone, ID, and life-saving pills were left completely untouched. Discarded gloves turned up exactly 1 mile away. Forensic teams pulled genetics, but the national database stayed empty. Desperate technicians turned to cutting-edge DNA trees. Chilling photos proved the exact same shadow stalked her property weeks before. This wasn't random chance. She was meticulously hunted down, targeted. Extortion notes flooded in, demanding millions in untraceable digital currency. 2 agonizing deadlines expired. Her devastated daughter publicly begged. The feds monitored the terrifying dialogue. The kidnappers offered zero proof the 84-year-old was breathing. The silence was agonizing. A monster hides in plain sight. Somebody holds the key to bring her back. Step out of the shadows. Make the call. Looking south of the border exposed a massive structural shift in the manhunt. Rules changed. Operationally, the terrain itself whispered a different story. Everyone stared at the wrong map. We must break down the sheer mechanics. It is never a casual phone call. It is a heavy system. Decoding that rigid structure reveals exactly how terrified authorities truly are right now. Federal intelligence runs covert legal attachment hubs deep inside international embassies, the hidden lifelines of justice. Elite operatives man these desks with one singular mission. They are the fragile bridge connecting our cops to foreign forces. They do not wait for a conviction. They strike the very second a credible threat bleeds too dangerously close to an international boundary line. The specific tactical branch activated for this nightmare was located down in Sonora, a state touching the edge of Arizona. According to CBS News, that exact office received the terrifying midnight alert. What exactly did the feds transmit? The New York Times interviewed a high-ranking foreign official who finally leaked the truth. Evidence suggested a highly suspicious transaction occurred. A tiny clue, but that official admitted the lead eventually burned to ash. That catastrophic failure reveals 2 vital clues. It proves investigators were aggressively hunting a real threat moving south. This was absolutely no routine check. It highlights how quickly a scent evaporates. Meanwhile, our domestic border guards were quietly handed the target profile. Armed officers manned checkpoints. High-tech towers scanned the barren highway corridor stretching toward the border. They memorized the victim's face, the abductor's build, and the razor-thin timeline. According to TMZ sources, every single digital eye was scoured, yet the screens reflected nothing but empty asphalt. Zero visual evidence exists of her slipping past a checkpoint, but seasoned border agents will warn you about a terrifying, fatal blind spot. Checkpoints are just mild hurdles for true predators. There are darker, unseen paths. Examine the jagged geography surrounding the affluent neighborhood. The systemic failure is obvious. You stumble upon a sinister geographic feature the media completely ignored: the underground. A pitch-black labyrinth of flood pipes snakes beneath the city, concrete channels cutting right under unsuspecting streets. They weave under hillsides. But that night, they may have swallowed something far more precious. Cold open. They stay completely hidden out of sight. People ignore them, but the nightmare is absolutely real. A sprawling subterranean labyrinth breathes just beneath the surface. It runs right under the very Tucson neighborhood Nancy Guthrie loved. News Nation reporter Brian Anton descended into that abyss on day 23 of the manhunt. He uncovered a hidden society of concrete arteries, easily wide enough to swallow a person whole. Unhoused populations survive in the damp darkness down there. Civilian searchers burned a whole weekend combing that subterranean maze. They hunted desperately for a shred of Nancy, praying to find proof. Deep in the gloom, one search party stumbled upon a solitary backpack. The Pima County Sheriff immediately bagged it for forensic DNA evidence. But before you jump to conclusions, authorities quickly walked it back. They claimed the discarded bag had absolutely nothing to do with whoever stole her away. Officially, they refused to connect this subterranean find to the 25-liter Ozark trail bag. The FBI verified the predator wore that specific pack on the fatal night. We need to be crystal clear. These were totally distinct pieces of gear. Yet the sheer reality that investigators scoured those catacombs in the first place, treating them as absolute ground zero, it reveals a chilling truth. Evidence suggested the perpetrator slipped out of Nancy's familiar world by vanishing straight into the earth. Which brings us to the most agonizing riddle of this entire nightmare. If a phantom dragged her through the dark, exactly where did that terror lead? Now, Tucson's storm drains are built strictly to manage desert monsoons. They do not carve a direct asphalt runway down to Nogales. They do, however, offer a ghost route, a completely untraceable path that avoids every sunlit street and every single traffic lens. It sneaks past the digital watchdogs and doorbell cameras. Modern detectives rely heavily on those tools to solve the unsolvable. Because once a predator slips the grid, gaining 20 to 30 minutes of invisible flight, 60 miles suddenly becomes a terrifyingly short trip. Grainy footage captured a vehicle tearing down the asphalt 2.5 miles from Nancy's sanctuary. The clock read exactly 2:36 in the morning. As far as the outside world knows, that blurry frame is the final digital footprint we have in this tragedy. Past 2:36 in the morning, the trail goes dead cold. No checkpoints, no optics until Rio Rico. On the stormy night of February 10th, deputies yanked a person of interest out of his vehicle during a tense roadside stop. We are talking 60 miles deep into southern Arizona, hovering barely 10 miles from the international boundary at Nogales. The Pima County Sheriff and the FBI aggressively tore through his local residence and car, but that was the first systemic mistake. By February 11th, the raid fizzled out entirely. Avoiding a wrongful conviction, the guy walked away totally clean. Sheriff Nanos publicly declared him a dead end. Speaking exclusively to Telemundo right on his lawn, the man verified authorities had ransacked his life. He showed the splintered wreckage of his front door. He told the camera his name was Carlos Palos. He claimed they caged him against his will. They supposedly withheld his Miranda rights for 2 agonizing hours. Why was his face bruised and battered? Did he have any idea who Nancy Guthrie was? Did he know absolutely anything? He muttered about smashed doors. He swore unmarked cars were tailing him through Marana. Even knowing this specific suspect turned out to be a total ghost, executing a blind raid 60 miles south of the city, merely 10 miles from Mexico, within the opening 10 days. It screams a very specific, terrifying truth. Detectives never waited for clues to aim toward the border. They were already hunting south, guided by a chilling internal logic. You simply do not barrel 60 miles south on day 10 of a cold case. Just 9 days into a terrifying hostage ransom situation, evidence suggested a highly specific southern trajectory. Maybe it was a whispered tip or a hidden surveillance flash. Perhaps a dark web financial transaction or a burner phone ping dragged heavily armed tactical teams out into the desert dust. But nobody knew yet. The digital currency demand. TMZ reported that the earliest extortion notes demanded pure Bitcoin. Forget cold hard cash or messy bank wires, they wanted untouchable crypto. By the time TMZ secured what looked like a chillingly advanced second ransom letter, the captors had pivoted to an altcoin, a virtual currency engineered specifically to vanish without a trace. Here is why this financial ghost story changes the map. Physical money drops force a monster out into the open. The terrifying handoff must happen in reality. That means sniper scopes, hidden microphones, and a paper trail stained with damning fingerprints. But the blockchain possesses no physical zip code. A digital vault can be unlocked from a basement in Tucson, a cartel stronghold in Hermosillo, or literally any dark corner. Demanding ghost money does not guarantee the abductor fled across international lines. It proves they meticulously planned to bleed the family dry without ever stepping out of the shadows. Evidence suggested a chilling level of methodical calculation behind this nightmare. The perpetrator stalked that exact property a minimum of 2 times before striking. That specific digital currency was no accident. Yet, the true horror lay hidden inside the ransom's delivery method. Copies landed at TMZ and a local Tucson news desk. Average domestic abductors absolutely never play that particular card. Extortionists usually demand cash straight from terrified loved ones in total secrecy. Alerting the press invites immense federal heat, unless the suspect operated entirely beyond American jurisdiction. That glaring geographical blind spot brings us to the Madre Buscadoras. By February of 2026, several grieving mothers traveled north into Arizona. They arrived not for vacation, not for family. They came to hunt. The searching mothers of Sonora stand today as arguably the most formidable missing persons unit operating across the Americas. Cecilia Flores built this alliance from unimaginable pain, after cartels allegedly snatched 2 of her boys in recent years. Her tragedy sparked an international volunteer army willing to tackle the grim excavations that official agencies constantly ignore. They strike the dirt with long metal rods. The scent of decay tells them exactly where to dig next. Shifting soil speaks volumes to them. They deliberately venture into the deepest, most terrifying shadows. Barren wastelands, parched arroyos, the forgotten fringes of humanity where dark secrets stay buried forever. During January 2024, they unearthed 50 souls across 30 clandestine Sonoran sites in merely 3 days. 4 agonizing weeks into Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, those fierce women reached Tucson. A desperate family confidant begged for their unique expertise. Immediate paperwork was filed to legally comb through the punishing local terrain. Flores declared to the press that her crew stood entirely ready to assist. They promised unrelenting effort for Nancy's loved ones. She insisted that every matriarch belongs safely at home. But the Pima County Sheriff's Department brutally slammed the doors shut. Their dismissive statement thanked the volunteers, yet coldly ordered them to leave police work to the actual professionals. Bureaucracy suddenly walled off countless vital target zones that desperately needed sweeping. One crucial wash near the property remained totally off limits. According to CNN, aggressive residents chased searcher Lupita away, screaming wildly about trespassing and demanding immediate retreat. She publicly acknowledged her deep respect for local property ordinances. Yet, the utter lack of neighborhood cooperation made any meaningful progress virtually impossible, and that was the first mistake. Let the sheer weight of this absolute systemic failure sink in. Shattered mothers forged their unspeakable trauma into undeniable investigative prowess. They understand the sickening void of a perpetually unsolved abduction deep within their very bones. These resilient volunteers crossed international borders simply to rescue an 84-year-old stranger. Yet, the cops arrogantly brushed them off as mere amateurs, despite failing to identify a single viable suspect after 30 agonizing days. The Sonora mothers refused to simply walk away. Hundreds of missing posters flooded the sweltering city streets. Operating heavily from Nogales, just across the international boundary line, they pushed forward blindly. Official access was brutally denied, but complete surrender simply wasn't an option. Pay close attention to this glaring oversight. The hemisphere's absolute best desert forensic trackers showed up to help. They brought unparalleled regional expertise, yet law enforcement arrogantly locked them out of the crime scene. Time will eventually reveal the fatal cost of that hubris. For now, it remains a dark stain on the official timeline, harboring a far more sinister truth. But the central mystery harbored one massive, overlooked secret: Charles Guthrie. Earlier in this investigation, I teased a deeply buried family connection, tying this devastating cold case directly back to the dark shadows of the southern border. Brace yourself. Charles Errol Guthrie worked heavily in mineral extraction. His sheer presence could dominate any space he entered. His own daughter, Savannah, lovingly described her father as a 5,000-watt bulb. His intense, demanding career relentlessly dragged the entire family across the globe. Following extensive stints in Melbourne, Australia, they finally anchored down during the mid-70s. They purchased that gorgeous burnt adobe Catalina foothills home, where Nancy flourished peacefully for over 50 years. By June of 1988, Charles ventured deep into Mexican territory, hunting for lucrative deposits. A massive cardiac event struck the 49-year-old down. He never made it back across the border alive. At 46, Nancy buried her husband. She raised 3 kids, completely alone, refusing to ever wed again. She remained fiercely, stubbornly loyal to that exact same property until a monster ripped her away from it. But nobody knew yet that this wasn't the first time the border utterly shattered her world. That southern terrain had already stolen a massive piece of her soul almost 40 years earlier. Evidence suggested absolutely no foul play whatsoever regarding Charles. Let me be unequivocally clear about that fact right now. Linking his natural demise to her violent abduction crosses into reckless territory. But the tragic echoes remain deafening, leaving an agonizing open wound. Her late husband built real infrastructure down south. That was the first mistake, honestly. This family tied their fate to those dusty roads long ago. It goes deeper than miles on a map or invisible borders separating our nations. That suffocating grief constantly haunted Nancy Guthrie since 1988. Federal agents inevitably pivoted toward the exact soil where her husband vanished. Suddenly, analyzing this rugged terrain morphed from a routine cold case into a deeply terrifying echo. This fragile grandmother intimately understood those dark shadows. But where was she now? A sickening void. Evidence suggested a single, frantic escape vehicle tearing down the asphalt. It blew past cameras 2.5 miles from her sanctuary at 2:36 a.m. Then, absolute darkness. No border patrol logs. Interstate 19 was totally blind. Systemic failure allowed this ghosting. Not a single breadcrumb anchored this vulnerable grandmother or her faceless monster to the earth after roughly 2:40 in the morning on February 1st. Yet, whispered leaks to local journalists hinted she vanished from Tucson mere hours after the lock was violently broken. But rogue private eye Bill Garcia confidently told local news crews the suspects definitely fled north toward Phoenix. They supposedly avoided the southern Mexican trap. Transporting a frail, physically limited captive down the heavily guarded Nogales Highway seemed impossible. Too many cops, too much risk. That sounded completely logical. That interstate crawls with cops. But nobody knew yet about the hidden cartel arteries bleeding right across that border. Evidence suggested detectives secretly scoured Rio Rico within the first 10 agonizing days. That town sits 60 miles south, a terrifying discrepancy hiding in plain sight. Federal agents never searched those southern valleys if they genuinely believed she went north. By March 2nd, 2026, a full agonizing month had passed. Her fragile condition remains an open wound. Local sheriffs and federal agents desperately spun the narrative, labeling this freezing case active. 0 monsters named. Absolutely no criminal charges filed to bring justice. The sprawling dragnet finally swallowed the entire border corridor. It relentlessly bled deep into the state of Sonora. Meanwhile, they activated diplomatic lifelines, reaching top brass down in Mexico City. The $12,500 local bounty joined a $100,000 federal prize. Savannah offered $1 million just to drag her mother safely home. Here is the sinister detail you must track. Monitor any upcoming, sudden press conferences hosted by Mexican authorities. If high prosecutors in Sonora or the capital suddenly pivot from having 0 leads to dropping specific hints, pay attention. That subtle shift in official tone means a massive domino just fell. Keep digging for updates regarding breakthrough genealogical DNA evidence. Detectives are currently weaponizing familial genetics to hunt. That means they could literally unmask this phantom through some distant cousin logged in a public database. The arrogant killer might feel perfectly safe, but his own blood screams. Look for major breaks surrounding those untraceable Bitcoin and digital currency ransoms. Elite federal financial hounds can occasionally map digital ledgers through shady, underground exchanges. The clock ticks. But if that greedy extortionist slipped up just once while cashing out, those relentless agents will definitely follow that digital trail. Also, fiercely monitor whether cops abruptly redraw the physical boundaries of this totally nightmarish desert manhunt. Currently, officials swear no solid evidence officially traps poor Nancy south of the border. Another lie? The second that narrative shatters, every terrifying detail you just learned will expose the truth. Nancy was exactly 84 years old. She desperately needed heart pills she never packed before vanishing from home. Her devastated loved ones publicly admitted she might already be dead. Yet, they violently cling to hope. Thousands of absolute strangers online are praying for a sudden miracle too. If you hold one vital secret regarding poor Nancy's hidden location, or recognize the brutal coward who stole her away, please dial 1-800-CALL-FBI, or submit tips at tips.fbi.gov. We won't stop hunting him. The chilling disappearance of Nancy Guthrie is a stark reminder that true darkness often hides where we feel most secure. An 84-year-old grandmother, violently abducted from the peaceful sanctuary of her own home, forces us to confront an uncomfortable reality. Our safety nets are sometimes fragile illusions. This tragedy exposes the terrifying blind spots in our communities, showing how easily a predator can vanish into the concrete flood pipes beneath our streets, or hide behind the veil of untraceable digital currency. But from this harrowing nightmare emerges a profound lesson in human resilience. We see it in the unstoppable Madre Buscadoras mothers, forged by unspeakable grief, who cross international borders to find answers. Armed with metal rods and relentless hope, they venture into the darkest shadows to hunt for the missing when official agencies step back. They teach us that when institutions fail, everyday humanity must step up. We must remain vigilant, fiercely protect the vulnerable among us, and refuse to let the monsters win. Thank you so much for watching and seeking the truth with us. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below to help keep Nancy's case in the public eye. Together, we can shine a light into the darkest corners. Beneath Crimson Truth,